on the phone.
We need a few minutes anyway.
Okay, welcome, I'm back.
Welcome, everybody. We're resuming the Planning Commission meeting. We're moving to the 2020 annual docket, proposed amendments to San Juan County Development Regulations and Comprehensive Plan. And Sophia Kassam, Planner 1, is reporting.
Good morning. Just a moment while I get the screen set up. All right, is everyone able to see my screen okay?
Yes.
Yes? Yep. Okay. Excellent. Well, good morning, Planning Commission. This is Sophia Kassam, and I'll be briefing you on the 2020 docket before we proceed with the public hearing. I'd like to provide you with some background on the docket and on the docket process, and then I'll go ahead and summarize the 7 docket requests, and I'll explain the staff recommendations. Those recommendations were included in the May 11th and July 2nd staff reports, and the last time that we touched on this together was on July 19th. So the annual docket is a list of text amendments to the comp plan and to the Unified Development Code and to the official plan maps. We go through the docket process to decide whether or when to put these requests on the DCD work plan. The county is required by the GMA to allow anyone who's interested to request these amendments once per year, and the deadline this year to submit a docket request was March 1st. So this year we received 7 docket requests, and the majority of these requests are for things that we can address during the comp plan update. You'll be able to find this table in the staff report as well. And then there's also a in-depth summary table in attachment A of the most recent staff report. So I'll briefly walk through the requests and our recommendations. First off, we have an application from Deer Harbor Plan Review Committee. Their first request was to remove the community center overlay district from the Deer Harbor plan to eliminate some existing roadblocks to the development of small business activities in the hamlet. The second request was to amend various parts of the Deer Harbor Unified Development Code land use tables to encourage the development of small businesses and affordable housing, and also to preserve the general sense of community and to conserve natural resources in the area. And then their third request is to add the words "and its environs" to the committee's defined area of oversight because of the hamlet's geography. The activities occurring in the general environs kind of inherently affect the hamlet. So staff recommends incorporating requests 1 and 2 into the comprehensive plan update. And request 3 has already been addressed by the DCD director. Erica showed the committee how to search for permits within the area around the hamlet on their own. So we don't find it necessary to change the definition of their area of oversight. The second request is from Homes for Islanders. They actually have 4 requests in their application, and they are related to affordable housing and to the rural residential cluster development code in the in Title 18. So the first request is to delete SJCC 1860-230C3B, which is part of the affordable housing parameters for rural residential cluster development. And that bit limits cluster developments to only one of the 4 methods of assuring affordability that are listed in the General Affordable Housing Code. The second request is to implement the 2009 Housing Element Policy, allowing 12 dwelling units in rural residential cluster developments rather than the 8 that we currently allow in the code. And then the third request is to increase the floor area limitation for dwelling units in rural residential clusters to 1,750 square feet in order to allow for more bedrooms to accommodate larger families. It currently allows just 1,500, so it would be an increase of 250 square feet. Then the fourth request from Homes for Islanders is to allow more middle-income affordable housing units by deleting SJCC 1860-260G. And this code limits the percent of units in a housing development that can be counted as quote-unquote affordable when they're for middle-income households if the developer is taking advantage of affordable housing incentives. So we got feedback on these from Ryan Page, the Affordable Housing Coordinator, and we recommend considering all of these as part during the comp plan update. They are part of a larger discussion about affordable housing policies and code changes that we would like to have with Planning Commission and Council in August. The third request came in from Janet Alderton. The request is to remove certain language in the draft transportation element about exploring Lopez and Orcas as potential international ports of entry. This request was a request for change to a draft element. So we shared it with Public Works, and it's being considered as a public comment on the transportation element, which is currently in the works. The fourth application came in from John Campbell. He requested to amend the definition of affordable housing in SJCC 1860-260B, which are the Affordable Housing Development Standards. And he proposed to remove utilities and taxes from how we determine housing affordability. We talked this one over with Ryan Page as well, and we recommend moving forward with it during the comp plan update. Just like the Homes for Islanders request, this one is part of the larger discussion about affordable housing that we'd like to continue with you all in August. Request 5 came from a group of Orcas Island residents, and this request is really similar to request number 3 about removing text in the transportation element about exploring Lopez and Orcas as international ports of entry. And just like with request 3, we shared it with Public Works because the comment is on, or the request is on a draft element, and it's being considered as a public comment. Number 6 came in from Jennifer DeGroot, and the request was to add coastal cutthroat trout to the list of species of local importance under SJCC 1835-115, which are the Fish and Wildlife Habitat Conservation Areas, list of types of fish and wildlife habitat conservation areas. We recommend considering this during the critical areas update, which will likely follow the comp plan update. This request was also submitted in 2018, and at that time, Council had decided that it should be added to our work plan after the comp plan update. Request 7 is from the San Juan County Department of Community Development. There are 2 scrivener's errors that were found in the Friday Harbor urban growth area on the plan official maps, and these need to be corrected. By doing so, we would be resolving some inconsistencies with Ordinance 47, 2007, which set the Friday Harbor UGA boundaries back in 2007. And the specific parcels are shown in the staff report. We recommend making these 2 official map corrections during the comprehensive plan update. So those are all of the 2020 docket requests. In summary, we recommend considering number 1, 2, 4, and 7 during the comprehensive plan update. Considering 3 and 5 as public comments on the transportation element, the draft transportation element, and then considering number 6 during the critical areas update after the plan update. We have received 2 public comments, or we had 2 public comments come in for the 2020 docket, but they turned out to have to do more with other documents rather than specific docket items that we're looking at this year. One comment was related to the land use element, and then the other one was on the Deer Harbor sub-area plan. And so we've redirected those comments to the appropriate places, and we will be considering them as we work on those 2 other things. So if you arrive at a recommendation today, I will be briefing County Council on Planning Commission's recommendation on Tuesday next week, and at that time we'll set the date for a public hearing, and then after that there will be a council public hearing to adopt the 2020 docket. So that's all from me at this time. Unless there are questions, I'll hand it back over to our chairwoman.
Are there any questions of Sophia? Hearing none, we'll open public testimony. Linda?
And Shanks, are you looking to speak to the 2020 annual docket?
Only if there were questions about the Deer Harbor submission.
Okay, thank you very much.
Has anybody else called in? Okay. Well,
I show and
Oh, Mike isn't there anymore?
Mike.
No, guess not.
I'm here.
No, not you, Michael.
different Michael.
Other Mike.
Okay, then public testimony is closed with the option to reopen. Now the Planning Commission may ask questions of Sophia. Tim?
I have none.
David?
Yeah, no questions. Thank you.
Michael?
No questions, Camille. Thanks.
Stephen?
No questions. Thank you.
Right.
Return to Sophia if she has anything else.
Sophia, do you have anything further to say at this time?
I do not.
Okay. Then we would look for a motion.
We want to go into deliberation.
Oh, deliberations. Sorry. I'll get this maybe. Deliberations. Are there any participants of the Planning Commission who would like to raise some points here? Hearing none, I would ask for a motion. Well, I move that Okay.
Go ahead, Tim.
This is Tim. I move that the Planning Commission. I move that we forward the staff report regarding the 2020 annual docket to the County Council.
Tim, for clarification, you're recommending approval.
Yes.
And forwarding it to.
Yes.
Yes. So I'll restate. I move that we recommend approval of the approach set forth in the staff report to the County Council.
Is there a second?
Yeah, David Kane here. I'll second that.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? If not, I'll seek approval of the motion. Tim?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Sarah votes yes. Thank you, Sophia.
Thank you.
We now move to the briefing on the comp plan for the 2036 update. And Adam, are you back with us?
I am, yeah. Well, let me just get my screen up here. Again, this is Adam Zach, planner with DCD. Today I will brief you on the general organization of the land use and rural element. The draft element before you today was reorganized to put rural goals and policies into their own section. And the existing language was edited for clarity, and the introduction sections were updated to incorporate some new information from the land capacity analysis, the housing needs assessment, and the population forecast. The format has been changed to match some of the other updated elements. But in this draft, no new policies have been added yet. We plan on kind of working through that in the coming months with you. The purpose for the briefing today is to familiarize you with the new organization of the element and give you an idea of what we will be working on over the next couple of months. And this will give you an idea of where certain topics are addressed in the element. So when we get to those, addressing those with policy, you'll kind of know where that lives in the element. I would like to get your feedback today on just the overall organization of the element. As Erica mentioned earlier today, we'll get into kind of specific text changes, including new policies, starting at the meeting next month. The land use element, or the land use and rural element, is really huge. So we plan on kind of taking it in chunks over the next several meetings so that we don't get kind of bogged down in just how big the element is. So the land use and rural element was reorganized to move the rural goals and policies into their own section within the element. This allows for more emphasis and discussion of rural issues, goals, and policies. And then the introduction of that rural section will help set the table for the issues that we're going to address in rural areas, including that definition of rural character. This organization also creates a section for just kind of general rural goals and policies that didn't exist in the originally adopted land use element. The most important thing here is that the rural section addressed the GMA requirements for the rural element. Having the rural element be a section of the land use element is similar to some other jurisdictions and how they organize their comp plans. It's also how we've organized our comp plan in the past. For example, Jefferson County just recently updated their comprehensive plan, and they used the same kind of organization, keeping land use and rural together in one element. Again, the most important thing is that we make sure that our rural goals and policies and all of the rural section just address those needs of the rural element. One of the advantages of this is that it'll still allow us to discuss rural character and adopt that definition, but won't necessarily require renumbering all of the other elements, which is more of an undertaking than just changing the title. We have to go through and make sure that all of the internal citations all still match. So this is a way to kind of keep the scope of this really well defined. The first section of the land use element is the introduction. This section kind of describes the current conditions in the county and the forecasted growth over the planning period through the year 2036. The introduction has been expanded in this draft to provide a summary of the information in the land capacity analysis, the population forecast, and the housing needs assessment. This information is included in the introduction to kind of describe those expected changes over the next 20 years and to explain the issues that the element is seeking to address. We plan on going through the specific language of this section with the Planning Commission at your meeting in August. And at that time, we can really go through kind of line by line on this introduction and make sure that it fits with your recommendations. Section 2.2.a through M are the general goals and policies, the general land use goals and policies. And these include policies for specific uses, such as vacation rentals or other kind of land use specific topics. This is where we will address issues such as accessory dwelling unit policy and vacation rental policy. We'll get started on making changes to this section in August, with work kind of expected to continue over the next couple of months. As I mentioned earlier, we will have some issue papers on some of the bigger land use topics ready for you next month. Section 2.3 establishes the policies for specific land use designations. In this draft, Section 2.3 includes the policies for urban and natural resource land use designations. One of the most important policy discussions we will have here regards the designation criteria for those urban and natural resource lands, specifically the designation criteria for natural resource lands. We plan on taking a closer look at natural resource land policies and designations beginning in September. Section 2.4 establishes the policies for overlay districts, which includes the mineral resource land overlay, the airport overlay, and our critical areas. The mineral resource land overlay will be the focus of our discussion on this section. Currently, the county does not have any designated mineral resource land, but we expect that to change during the update to make sure that we're designating our mineral resource land appropriately. And we'll look at this, at that overlay, the mineral resource land overlay, when we discuss the natural resource land issues in September. The airport overlay goals and policies in this section are just general airport overlay goals and policies. They don't necessarily address the East Sound Airport overlay specifically. The East Sound Airport overlay is established in the East Sound sub-area plan, and we plan on addressing that issue with the other East Sound issues after the East Sound Planning Review Committee has a chance to make a recommendation. I plan on working with the EPRC on the East Sound issues at some point this fall. So we're still working on figuring out how those public meetings are going to go with the new distancing guidelines. Section 2.5 establishes the goals and policies for sub-area plans. This section was last updated when the county adopted the Lopez Village sub-area plan last year. Because it was recently updated in October, we don't expect any substantial changes to this section. Section 3.1 is the rural introduction. It really introduces the rural section of the element and describes the rural lands and includes the county's adopted definition of rural character from San Juan County Code. Including this in the element here will give you the opportunity to examine the definition and recommend changes if desired. And then ultimately, we'll need to make sure that if we make changes in the element, that those changes get reflected in the county code so that the adopted definition is consistent between the plan and the code. We plan on going through this introduction in August as well, and that will include some discussion of the rural character definition, and that's the meeting on August 21st. Section 3.2 is a new section. This is a placeholder for some general rural goals and policies. The goals and policies here would apply to all rural lands, including activity centers. And this is where you can recommend special policies for kind of general rural issues. This section, we expect to expand this section kind of throughout the update as you work through the various land use issues in the coming months. Section 3.3 establishes the goals and policies for activity centers, limited areas of more intense rural development, and master planned resorts. This section was relocated to this kind of rural section of the element in this draft. So all of these goals and policies are from the existing land use element, just moved to a new section. One of the main issues we plan to address in this section are policies related to the allowed uses in activity centers and those limited areas of more intense rural development, such as Island Center. And we plan on starting to work through these issues in October or November. Let's see. Section 3.4 sets the goals and policies for rural designations, including the designation criteria for these lands. Rural designations include rural farm forest, rural residential, and rural general use. We plan on starting to work on this section in September and October, starting to work through some of those issues there. And finally, section 3.5 establishes the goals and policies for the natural and conservancy designations. The draft before you today includes a placeholder section for a possible parks and preserves designation. This designation would be a special land use designation for public lands to better fit the designation to the mission for public landowners, such as San Juan County Parks and the San Juan County Land Bank. We plan on discussing this potential designation with you and the County Council at sometime in September. So looking ahead at the next couple of Planning Commission meetings, in August we'll start to working on the land use and rural introductions, which includes that rural character definition. And then we plan on briefing you in August on some of the bigger land use issues, vacation rentals, accessory dwelling units, farm worker housing, and rural residential cluster development. Then in September, you'll provide feedback on some of those issues that we briefed in August, so you'll have some time to kind of ruminate on your feedback you'd like to provide. Then I'll brief you on the natural resource lands. And then after that, we'll continue to work on these issues and goals and policies in October, hoping to kind of work towards getting your recommendation to the County Council by the end of the year. That's hopefully. Public comments on the land use and rural element can be sent to compplancomments@sanjuanco.com. Please don't copy members of staff or members of the County Council. And when those comments come in, they get posted to the county website and are provided to the Planning Commission and the County Council. The public can also sign up to receive notices about the comp plan update on the county website. And with that, I would be open to any questions you may have about the land use element organization.
Thank you, Adam. That was very clear. And I especially enjoyed the photographs that accompanied it.
Oh, thanks. Some of those are from, I took a kayaking trip over to Jones Island recently and got some pictures of angles that we don't normally see of the other islands. So it was
much appreciated. Thank you. Well, let's move through the commissioners and see what questions or comments they have to make. We'll begin with Tim.
Thank you. Adam, as far as the general organization of the land use element, I think it's, as you noted, consistent with the way we've approached the other elements, and I think it's a good idea and moves in the direction we started on other things of making things more accessible to the public. So I like that. I still do not believe, though, that the rural, I understand your point about renumbering and cross-references and all that, but I'm still concerned that relegating the rural element, which San Juan County has actually never had, notwithstanding what the RCW and the WAC contemplates, to a section of the land use element doesn't really do it justice in my view. What I mean by that is, while the fact that other counties and the fact that San Juan County to date has done it by scattering the rural stuff around, and while incorporating it into its own section of the land use element would improve upon where we have been before, and while some other counties have done it, I think it's important to recognize that protecting rural character is not just a matter of complying with the specific WAC that requires a rural element. It's also important because the vision statement requires it. And what I mean by requires it is it's absolutely clear that islanders overwhelmingly want to stay rural. There is no desire was expressed during that visioning process for any additional urbanization or suburbanization of the county. What we heard time and time again was people would like it to actually roll back and become more rural if we could, but maintaining a rural character of the county is critical. I would note that the vision statement notes regarding rural lands, and by the way, I appreciate your including vision statement references in the section 3.1 is good, but I don't think it goes far enough. Rural character is not just about landforms and development regulations. It's about people and relationships, and consequently, we should be looking at the extent to which any of the planning determinations that we make advance or inhibit maintaining those elements of rural character reflected in those relationships. So I would recommend, and I will in comments, that we add a few more references to the vision statement here. The main reason for mentioning the vision statement in this general comment about it, though, is in my comment about needing to be sure that we're not relegating this further, is that even if we only cared about the character of rural lands, because technically what the GMA rules require is that we protect the rural character of our rural lands, meaning not UGAs and not resource lands. But I think that there's no way to effectively protect the rural character of our rural lands without protecting the rural character of all of San Juan County. In fact, all of San Juan County is rural by almost every measure of rural, urban, suburban characteristics. So I think we have to be clear that the policies we would be adopting in 3.2 should not just be related to rural lands, but need to be related to protecting the rural character of our rural lands, which would mean incorporating some policies regarding key drivers of urbanization or suburbanization, including roads, including the rural character of lands located within our UGAs and our resource lands. And I just hope that this isn't designed to narrowly address policies related to those rural land designations, because I think that would utterly fail in the requirement to protect rural character of those areas, as well as the goal of the vision statement, which would be to protect the rural character of the entire county, UGAs included. I bristle every time we talk about urban lands, and I realize that you're using it in a technical sense of those land designations that aren't rural or resource. But I have to just say again, I think we need to stay away from that because it gives some members of the public the impression that we have urban areas, or we have areas that we're not concerned about protecting the rural character of. And I don't think that's what we're talking about. I think we should be referring to those as UGAs or by their specific names as opposed to calling them urban designations. Because if that is the case, I think it's accurate in the sense of the name of the designation, but inaccurate to characterize any part of the county with the possible exception of Friday Harbor, but I would even include Friday Harbor in this as urban. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Tim. David?
Yeah, no comments at this point. Thank you.
Mike Pickett?
Yeah, I appreciate, Adam, what you've done. I agree with the comments that have already been made about this, and in particularly, it seems to me that as its own element, it would be rural character would be so much more effective. And it seems, if I'm right, that the reason we aren't doing that is administrative, pagination and stuff like that. Maybe I overread that part. I guess if the rest of the commission, the council, of course, agree that this is the right way to go, I would be in favor because I think it's an improvement. But it is too bad that we can't have just one section that says everything about our rural character, including land use, and all the other things, some of which that Tim mentioned. So that's I'm not going to go over what he said, and I would have preferred something different. But this is what you've recommended, so we'll let it go for now.
Steve Ruby?
I think we can address these issues, next month when we start looking at it in more detail. But I guess I'm okay with the overall, presentation. It was fine. Thank you, Adam.
Thanks.
Yes, thanks, Adam. I concur. I was interested in Tim's comment about a nuanced definition of urban that has merit to look at. I realize that you do use it as a placeholder, but urban does cause me to bristle as well.
Well, and some of that is a result of the Growth Management Act, the state law. The state prescribes that we designate kind of 3 categories of land. And Tim kind of pointed this out too, that within the GMA framework, there's urban lands, which are the most kind of intense development in your county. And then there's natural resource lands that are long-term commercial significance for resource products. And then everything left over is grouped into rural lands. So those kind of 3 categories, we do have to use the kind of nomenclature of those. But in terms of defining what urban development is in San Juan County, we do have a fair amount of leeway with that, provided it also fits with the state definition, which is fairly broad. So I think we have to use the term, but we can define how we understand that term. And maybe we can look at, when we're looking at urban policy, delineating that a little bit more. Maybe not use the term rural character, but maybe it's community character in those urban growth areas. We can look at that a little closer as we get as we work through these issues.
Very good. Is there any further discussion or questions of Adam? Well, then we'll look forward to the August hearing or the August meeting. Hopefully, we'll go a little more smoothly with Microsoft Meet Teams. And the fallback after that would be to maybe move to Zoom. But as Erica Shook pointed out, she has IT, or we have IT support for Microsoft Meet Teams, and we would not have that support for Zoom, as I understand it. But thank you all for your patience today. Linda?
Planning Commission, is there any of you now, right this moment, that knows they aren't going to be available for the August meeting?
Linda, can you tell us the date of that meeting?
The date would be August 21st.
That's fine for me.
Okay. Well, I will ask for a motion to adjourn today's meeting.
I'll move it. This is Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
And I'll second that. Steve.
Thank you, Steve. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
All in favor?
Oh yeah. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Declined. Thank you. Passes unanimously. Oh, wow.
Whoa.